Hi, boys and girls. It was so wonderful to see so many of your smiling faces this morning on our first little Zoom conference. Thank you, parents, for joining us. I know it's really hard to add something like that into your day, especially when both of you might be working from home. Today, we're going to go ahead and finish our chapter book of Flat Stanley. And remember, we're learning how to read longer books because you guys are so smart. You're going to start reading more and more of them. So remember, because so much time has passed, we need to stop and think, open your memory door. What happened? What is Flat Stanley even about? You kind of want to do a retell before you even start again, so you get those, oh yeah moments, okay? So remember, the whole thing started with Stanley waking up with the bulletin board on him, fell on top of him when he was asleep. And his brother's the one that found him because they share a room. A lot of siblings do. And because of that, he had all these cool adventures, right? Didn't really hurt him, so we did some fun things. He saved his mom's ring. He became a human kite. Let's find that picture. That was really fun. There it is. It was fun until, of course, remember, his brother forgot about him and he got stuck in the tree. Speaking of his brother, he's getting a little jealous, which again is sometimes what siblings can do, because Stanley was getting more attention because of being flat. Arthur was feeling left out, and here he's trying to flatten himself so he can also get the attention. Didn't work, right? Would that work if you and I tried that? No, probably wouldn't. Feel very good though. And then he noticed that a neighbor was sad, and then his dad saw why. That the neighbor's an art museum specialist, and somebody or somebodies were planning on stealing more artwork. Remember that? Yeah. So Arthur becomes the hero, doesn't he? When he dresses up as a shepherdess. Got plopped into a picture frame, and then when the sneak thieves came, he yelled, and then they were arrested. That was chapter 4. We only have one more, and that's this one, chapter 5, and it's called Arthur's Good Idea. So his brother comes up with some smart thinking. All right, ready? It says, Arthur's Good Idea. For a while, Stanley Lambchop was a famous name. Everywhere that Stanley went, people stared and pointed at him. He could hear them whisper, "Over there, Agnes, over there. That must be Stanley Lambchop, the one who caught the sneak thieves," and things like that. But after a few weeks, the whispering and staring, there's no picture here, stopped. People had other things to think about. Stanley did not mind. Being famous had been fun, but enough was enough. And then came a further change, and it was not a pleasant one. People began to laugh and make fun of him as he passed by. Oh no. "Hello, super skinny," they would shout, and even ruder things about the way he looked. Stanley told his parents how he felt. "It's the other kids I mostly mind," he said. "They don't like me anymore because I'm different, flat." "Shame on them," Mrs. Lambchop said. "It is wrong to dislike people for their shapes, or their religion for that matter, or the color of their skin." She's so smart. Oh my goodness, right? "I know," Stanley said, "only maybe it's impossible for everybody to like everybody." "Perhaps," said Mrs. Lambchop, "but they can try." Later that night, Arthur Lambchop was woken by the sound of crying. Oh, it made my heart sad. In the darkness, he crept across the room and knelt by Stanley's bed. "Hey, are you okay?" he said. "Go away," Stanley said. "Don't be mad at me," Arthur said. "You're still mad because I let you get tangled the day you were my kite, I guess." "Oh, skip it, will you?" Stanley said. "I'm not mad. Go away." "Please, let's be friends." Arthur couldn't help crying a little too. "Oh, Stanley." Oh, look, there they are, brothers. holding each other's hands because neither of them likes to be seeing the other one sad, right? It makes us sad. Please tell me what's wrong. Stanley waited for a long time before he spoke. The thing is, he said, I'm just not happy anymore. I'm tired of being flat. I want to be a regular shape again, like other people. But I'll have to go on being flat forever. It makes me sick. Oh, Stanley, Arthur said. He dried his tears on a corner of Stanley's sheet and could think of nothing more to say. Don't talk about what I just said, Stanley told him. I don't want the folks to worry. That would only make it worse. You're brave, Arthur said. You really are. He took hold of Stanley's hand. The two brothers sat together in the darkness. They were being friends. They were both still sad, but each one felt a little better than he had before, right? Because they talked. That always makes you feel better. And then suddenly, though he was not even trying to think, Arthur had an idea. Ooh, the name of our chapter. He jumped up and turned on the light and ran to the big storage box where the toys and things were kept. He began to rummage in the box. Stanley sat up in the bed to watch. Arthur flung aside a football and some lead soldiers, an airplane model, and lots of wooden blocks. And then he said, aha! And he had found what he wanted. What do you think he was looking for? He held it up. An old bicycle pump. Stanley and Arthur looked at each other. Okay, Stanley said. So they didn't even have to say words. They just looked at each other and they knew. Do you guys understand it? A bike pump? You know those ch-ch-ch. Why are they so excited? Okay, Stanley said at last, but take it easy. He put the end of the long pump hose into his mouth and clamped his lips tightly around it so that no air could escape. I'll go slowly, Arthur said. If it hurts or anything, wiggle your hand at me. He began to pump. At first, nothing happened, except that Stanley's cheeks bulged out a little bit. Arthur watched his hand, but there was no wiggle signal, so he pumped on. Then suddenly, Stanley's top half began to swell. It's working, shouted Arthur, pumping away. Stanley spread his arms so that the air could get around inside of him more easily. He got bigger and bigger. The buttons of his pajama top burst off. Pop, pop, pop. A moment more, and he was all rounded out. Head, body, arms, and legs, but not his right foot. That foot stayed flat. Have you ever pumped up something? Maybe a balloon or a football or a basketball, and it starts to grow. And sometimes if you're doing like a raft, there's one little section that just that air can't get to. Oh, I love this picture. Look at that. Look at his face holding it in. Oh yeah, look. So his feet aren't inflated yet, but his upper body is. So that's the best. Arthur stopped pumping. It's like trying to do the very last bit of those long balloons. Yeah, he said. Maybe a shake would help. Stanley shook his right foot twice, and with a little whoosh sound, it swelled out to match the left one. There stood Stanley Lambchop as he used to be, as if he had never been flat at all. Thank you, Arthur, Stanley said. Thank you very much. The brothers were shaking hands when Mr. Lambchop strode into the room with Mrs. Lambchop right behind him. We heard you, said Mr. Lambchop. Up and talking when you ought to be asleep, eh? Shame on you, boy. George, said Mrs. Lambchop. Oh, so Mr. Lambchop came in to say, bad boys, go to bed, it's past your bedtime. But Mrs. Lambchop, she realized that Stanley was better. Stanley's round again, she said. Here's a good picture. You're right, said Mr. Lamb Chop, noticing for the first time. Good for you, Stanley. I'm the one who did it, Arthur said. I blew him up. Everyone was terribly excited and happy, of course. Mrs. Lamb Chop made hot chocolate, oh yum, to celebrate the occasion. And several toasts were drunk to Arthur for his cleverness. That means being smart. When the little party was over, Mr. and Mrs. Lamb Chop tucked the boys back into their beds and kissed them. And then they turned out the light. Good night, they said. Good night, said Stanley and Arthur. It had been a long and tiring day. Very soon, all the Lamb Chops were asleep. So there's their little party. Looks like they even have cookies. Ooh, yes, they do. Yum, yum. Hey, I think we need to celebrate the end of this chapter book with some hot cocoa and cookies, maybe. Oh, I know my boys would love that. Oh, and look, that's it. You did it with me. Thank you so much for letting me share one of my favorite first chapter books with you. I hope you have a chance to play with your own little flat Stanley. Maybe you can send him to some friends, take some pictures of him doing your activities with you and send it to me. I did tell your parents that another good chapter book is The Tale of Despereaux. You might want to read it first, parents, to see if it's something that you want to read aloud to them. Maybe wait until next year because it's got some scary parts in it. Miss everyone. I know I say that, but it was great seeing you today on our Zoom meeting. And I'm looking forward to more house partying and more Zooming, and that will come. Today's Thursday. We only have one more day tomorrow before the big spring break. And so we'll just be catching up a little bit here and there, and then we'll let you have your nice restful break before we dive back into our next part of all of this distant learning stuff. Okay, have a good one.